Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Well, it seems to me like you're looking for some really good video games. Well, if so, then you've come to the right place, as we're just about to pour ourselves a drink and take a look at the very best games from the year 1992. So come on, pull up a pew and let us tell you all about the greatest video games from a year that most of us here at Team TripleJump, except office old fogie James, can barely even remember. As is always the case with these sorts of videos, before we get into it, we must reacquaint you all with the rules. Though if you don't know them by now, there's no hope. A game can qualify for one of these lists if it was released in at least one territory in the year in question and received a minimum of 7 professional reviews. We don't include ports, re-releases, or collections, as you'll find those in the list that relates to their original release year. Savvy? I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best games of 1992. Number 10. Soul Blazer, SNES, 85.58%. Before you ask, yes, we've checked, and no, Soul Blazer is not a game about a smart jacket trying to make a name for itself as a rhythm and blues singer. Oh, if only. Originally released in 1992 in Japan and North America, but failing to make its way to the PAL region until 1994, Soul Blazer sees players taking on the role of one of the Master's heavenly divine companions, who is sent to the Frial Empire to liberate the souls of those incarcerated by the evil spirit Death Toll. Gameplay-wise, Soul Blazer is a traditional dungeon crawler, and it's up to players to destroy the monster lairs in each area, which frees the trapped souls and reincarnates their owners. These rescued folks are the grateful sort, and grant the player items and offer advice as a reward. Critics at the time of the game's release praised its challenging but fun gameplay, comparing it favourably to titles like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and contemporary reviews celebrate its quirky charm, excellent control scheme, and unique gameplay mechanics. Often overlooked these days, Soul Blazer is definitely one for fans of retro RPGs to seek out. Number 9. Contra 3: The Alien Wars, SNES, 86.35%. It would seem that 1992 was a great year to be a sequel, as this is the first of several we'll see on today's list. Contra 3: The Alien Wars is the second sequel to Contra, a run-and-gun shooter that began its life in arcades in 1987. For its third outing, the Contra series stuck pretty close to its tried-and-true formula, with players once again taking on the roles of Commandos Bill and Lance, who are tasked with fighting off aliens that have invaded the Earth. The gameplay itself sees players running and gunning their way through 6 stages, 4 of which are side-scrolling, with the remaining 2 played from a top-down perspective. As they progress, they're able to gain power-ups that will really give their dual machine guns some oomph. Reviewers lavished praise upon Contra 3, applauding its visuals and sound design. They were also impressed with the inclusion of the top-down segments, which they felt brought variety to proceedings, and with the overall design of the stages and the bosses in each. The game really pushed the limits of what the SNES could do, and was arguably one of the best reasons to own Nintendo's little grey and purple console. Number 8. The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, SNES, 87%. We're paying a visit to the House of Mouse now to take a look at the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, the first of 3 titles in Capcom's Disney Magic Quest series. The game follows the adventures of the eponymous rodent, who embarks on a quest to put a stop to the tyranny of Emperor Pete, no relation, who is responsible for the kidnap of Mickey's faithful pooch, Pluto. The game is your standard platforming fare, but the twist is that players have the opportunity to change Mickey's outfit, with each giving the protagonist special abilities. The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse got a decent response from critics, who were impressed by its colourful graphics, particularly those of the bosses and backgrounds, as well as the outfit system, which they felt added additional depth to the gameplay. There were some who felt the game was a bit on the easy side, and as such lacked longevity, but in fairness, it was aimed at small, Disney-loving children, and so I'm not sure we can really hold that against it. What we can hold against it though, spoiler alert, is the twist ending in which Mickey awakens to find that it was all just a dream. Now that really is unforgivable. Number 7. Streets of Rage 2, Mega Drive, 88%. The late 80s and early 90s were when the beat-em-up genre was in its prime, and one of the finest of all time is Streets of Rage 2, or Bare Knuckle 2 if you want to get Japanese about this, released in North America in December in 1992 and across the rest of the world in 1993. Set 1 year after the events of the first Streets of Rage 2 sees Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding set out on a mission to rescue their friend Adam, no, not that one, from the clutches of Mr. X and the Syndicate, who've kidnapped him in retaliation for their interference in the first game. Like its predecessor, Streets of Rage 2 is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, where players must face wave after wave of enemies while picking up items and making use of each character's special abilities and attacks. Upon its release, Streets of Rage 2 dominated the sales charts and received widespread critical acclaim, with the vast majority of outlets awarding it a score of 90 or above. The overall presentation, including the graphics, animations, and sound, received buckets of praise, as did the gameplay, which was well balanced and tons of fun. Number 6. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Mega Drive, 88.44%. When you release a groundbreaking game like 1991's Sonic the Hedgehog, you leave yourself in something of a pickle. After all, when your first game is so great, there are some pretty lofty expectations when it comes to a sequel. Thankfully, Sega knew what they were doing with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and it actually ended up outperforming its predecessor, at least from a critical standpoint. Like in the original, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 sees the titular spiky lad going fast and attempting to stop the evil Dr. Robotnik from getting his slimy hands on the Chaos Emeralds, which he's after this time in order to power his space station, because of course he is. Although it ultimately failed to outsell its predecessor, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 fared better than it with critics. Reviewers claimed that everything about the first game had been improved for the second. The graphics were better, the sprites were larger, the scenery was more varied, and Sonic himself had tons more attitude. There was also loads of love for Tails, who was described as the perfect, adorable companion for Sonic, as well as for the bonus stages and overall level design. Basically, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a masterclass in how to do a sequel right. Number 5. King's Quest VI, Air Today, Gone Tomorrow, PC, 88.75%. Sadly, there's nothing in the rules for these Best Games of the Year list that allows us to exclude games for having egregious puns in their titles, but by golly if there were, King's Quest VI Air Today Gone Tomorrow would be right out on its ear. Actually, I'm just going to double check that. Paragraph 3, subsection 6. No, there's not. It's a shame. Anyway, if you discount that utterly horrid pun in the title, King's Quest VI is actually a pretty good game. Set after the events of King's Quest V, the game sees Prince Alexander setting out on a quest to find Princess Cassima, after seeing a vision of her in a magical mirror. After being shipwrecked on the Isle of the Crown, he finds that Vizier Abdul al-Hazred has taken control, and plans to force the princess to marry him, and he must explore the land of the Green Isles and find a way to rescue her. The point-and-click adventure was lauded by critics who were impressed by its graphics, animations, sound, the quality of the puzzles, and the overall replay value of the game. It continued to sell well throughout the 90s, and so in that sense, it failed to live up to its awful pun name. All the more reason to have left it out. Number 4. Alone in the Dark, PC, 90%. These days, the words alone and in and the and dark, specifically in that order, conjure up images of cruddy games that will be right at home on worst games ever. But once upon a time, they were synonymous with high-quality, low-polygon spookums. Inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, Alone in the Dark traps the player character, either Edward Carnby or Emily Hartwood, in a haunted mansion and tasks them with escaping. It's not as simple as simply finding the emergency exit though, and players must solve puzzles in order to advance from room to room, avoiding malevolent supernatural forces as they go. Critics were floored by Alone in the Dark, praising its atmospheric design and the use of fixed camera angles, which some said gave players a movie-like experience. Although it might not look like much these days, at the time, the game was considered to be a truly scary experience. Not only was Alone in the Dark both a critical and commercial success, but it's now widely considered to be the forefather of the survival horror genre, inspiring the likes of Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It is not an exaggeration to say that without Alone in the Dark, horror gaming simply wouldn't be the same. Number 3. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, PC, 90%. More point-and-click fun now as we turn our attention to Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the graphic adventure developed and published by LucasArts. Set after the original 3 Indiana Jones movies, Fate of Atlantis sees everyone's favourite archaeology professor setting out on an expedition to find the lost city of Atlantis before those no-good Nazis can get their hands on its power and use it as a weapon. The game uses the so-called SCUM story system utilised by various LucasArts point-and-click titles throughout the 80s and 90s, and as such, its gameplay bears a number of similarities to the likes of Maniac Mansion and The Secret of Monkey Island. Players are tasked with exploring a number of static environments, interacting with characters, and using items to solve puzzles. When it hit shelves in June 1992, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis was both a critical and commercial success. Reviewers praised its thought-provoking gameplay as well as its graphics, animations, and replayability. Several publications named it the best adventure game of the year, and it has, in recent years, been labelled a classic of the genre. It does lose points from us, though, for the lack of face melting on display. Number 2. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, SNES, 92.87%. Now, before anyone gets up in our grill, we know that The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past got its original release in Japan in 1991, however, it didn't make its way to Western shores until the following year, and as such, it does qualify for a spot on this list. For this reason, though, we won't be counting it amongst the best of 1991, because we doubt you want to hear about it twice, and if you do, just replay this video when you get to the end of that one. The third game in the Legend of Zelda series is set, according to the Hyrule Historia at least, after the Ocarina of Time, in the timeline in which the hero is defeated. As is generally the case, players assume the role of protagonist Link, who this time embarks on a mission to defeat the Demon King Ganon, save Hyrule, and rescue the descendants of the Seven Sages. Like the vast majority of the Legend of Zelda titles, A Link to the Past was met with critical acclaim upon its release. Reviewers were particularly impressed with the gameplay and graphics, with several publications awarding the title a perfect score. These days, it's often cited amongst the greatest games of all time, and considering the fact that even to a modern audience, it's an exciting RPG experience, there really is little wonder. And number 1, Super Mario Kart, SNES, 93.6%. Do you think, back when they released Super Mario Kart in 1992, that Nintendo knew they were birthing a gaming phenomenon, one that would bring friends together and then tear them apart just as quickly? I suppose we'll never know, but what we do know is that Super Mario Kart marked the beginning of one of the finest racing video game series known to mankind. Originally released for the SNES, Super Mario Kart sees players taking control of one of 8 fan-favourite Mario series characters and racing them against the others in 4 multi-race cups. It's not necessarily about who has the fastest kart or the best driving skills though, because offensive and speed-boosting power-ups can be picked up along the way. So although you might be in first place after 2 laps, you are always just one banana peel away from utter misery. Super Mario Kart received critical acclaim, with reviewers and players alike lauding its addictive gameplay and roster of recognisable characters. It went on to sell almost 9 million copies worldwide, and was the 4th best-selling SNES game of all time. So once again, congratulations to Mario and chums for yet another Best Game of X Year title. We only hope you've got enough space in your awards cabinet to display this prestigious accolade alongside all the others.